Hey everyone, it's Kenji. We're gonna make some frijoles charros. So frijoles rancheros, also sometimes called cowboy beans. Really simple pinto bean dish that, you know, I sometimes I like refried beans, sometimes I like these style of beans. So what I have in this pot is just dried refried beans, dried pinto beans that I soaked overnight in lightly salted water, and then the next day I cooked it with a chunk of salt pork with enough water basically to cover it by a couple of inches. Just simmered it until the salt pork was cooked through and the beans were cooked through a couple hours. So they're nice and soft and tender. If you don't want to make your own beans like that, you can use canned beans just fine. So the other ingredients I'm going to use, I have this chunk of salt pork that I have from cooking the beans. If you used canned beans or you didn't use salt pork, right here you can use bacon instead. So just get a slab of bacon, or you know, either smoked or unsmoked, it doesn't matter. And cut it into you know, little pieces. So I'm going to start by cutting this pork into pieces. So the idea here is that we're going to take these pinto beans, we're going to flavor them with chilies, roasted tomatoes, onions, pork, garlic, and they are, yeah, really good. I'm sorry, I've been not making videos for a little while because I've had a lot of stuff going on at home and other projects I'm working on. Also, I was just trying to, you know, the summertime is here, the kids are out of school, so I am trying to take it a little bit easy as far as work goes. Spend some time outdoors as much as I can. Alright, so I'm going to get that pork going. Just sort of a moderate heat here. I had a little bit of oil in the pan to start. You don't really need to add extra oil. I just had it there to start because this pork was cooked in the broth before. But you know, if you have something like bacon or pancetta or anything like that, you don't really need to add any extra fat. It'll just cook in its own fat, own rendered fat. All right, so as that's going, I'm gonna cut up this onion, which is a little bit moldy, I think. My fridge died completely a few days ago, and so I came home we were gone for a couple days, and we came home and the freezer was completely defrosted. All of our handmade dumplings were like one congealed giant ball of dumpling mush at the bottom of a puddle in a bag. You know, it was horrible. And our fridge still isn't working, and it turns out it needs a brand new compressor, and it's like almost as much to get a new compressor as it is to just get a new fridge. So you know, so there's that situation. Anyhow, what that means is there were a bunch of things in there that I wanted to cook quickly, because you know, cooked food will at least last a little bit longer than uncooked food in there. So that's why I was trying to get rid of that pork belly. That's why I'm trying to cook these thawed hatch chilies that I roasted last summer. And that's why I'm making this dish and why we're gonna have it for dinner. All right, so I got this onion. Gonna dice it up. So right now you'll see the way I'm doing it, as I'm using two pots. I had one pot with the beans, and then I have a pan on the other side where I'm cooking sort of all the aromatics. You know, if you want to, or if you're using canned beans, or you're using beans that you cooked the day before that you already packed away into like a container or something, and you're just gonna reheat them, you can obviously do this pork and onion and all the other sort of aromatics in the Dutch oven itself, or in the bean pot itself, instead of in a side skillet, and then just add the beans on top of it at the end. All right, so I got my onion here. Going right in with that pork. A little bit more here. So, you know, all of that is to say, you know, about doing less video content recently, that there is some exciting stuff coming up on the horizon, including a podcast. You know, I will be another person with a podcast, although this time I'm doing it with a friend, a surprise friend who will be announced, I think in the fall is when the podcast will come out, and I think it'll be really fun. It's going to be about cooking and recipes. So I'll talk about that. That's coming out. I just had a TV show that came out. I was one of the judges on Morimoto's Sushi Masters, which you can see on Roku. You can see it for free on any device. You don't even need to get an account or anything. I'll put a link down below. All right, so I'm cooking down these onions, just moderate heat. I won't bore you. I'm gonna cook these down until they're almost completely soft and maybe just starting to caramelize a little bit. Oh, but in the meantime, here's what I'll do. I'm going to torch these tomatoes. So you can do this with, you know, canned fire roasted tomatoes. Those work really well. You can also take a tomato and use a set of tongs and hold it directly over a burner like that, or you can stick it under a broiler. I'm going to use this blowtorch to flame the skin, get the skin off, and also give it a little bit of a smoky flavor. So basically, I'm just going to. You can see as soon as you start torching the skin, it kind of puffs up and separates itself from the flesh underneath. And then as it dries out a little bit, picks up some color. And you can smell it. Well, you can't smell it, but I can smell it. Getting a little bit sort of smoky and charred. I promise you, it smells really good. And here's the other one. If you live in Seattle or you are coming to visit Seattle, the other project I'm working on is a sort of guide to, you know, my own sort of personal guide to eating out, not just eating out, but sort of enjoying yourself in Seattle. Lots of things you can do in Seattle. And if you want to find out where to eat in Seattle, at least according to my taste, you might like the stuff I have coming up as well. So stay tuned for all that. All right. Man, a lot of plugging going on today. So now you can see you can take those tomatoes and just kind of rub the skin right off. And there you got a skinless tomato. Virtually skinless, at least. This does not work so well on pets. Or children. Alright, so now I got my tomatoes here. And now we can just chop them up and use them. Some people like to get rid of the seeds. Sometimes I feel like, you know, sometimes I feel like a seed, sometimes I don't. Today I don't really mind. I'm gonna leave them in. I'm just gonna give them a real rough chop here. You can do this, I don't know why, I think I had these tomatoes from, I was making some Italian sandwiches the other day, so I had these like kind of beefsteak tomatoes to make some sandwiches. If I was buying tomatoes like from scratch, you know, going to the supermarket to buy some tomatoes, I would use plum tomatoes for this, which are generally better for, you know, higher in pectin, and so generally better for sort of sauces like this, dishes where you want them to really break down and to kind of like thicken things up a bit. Beefsteak tomatoes like these tend to be sort of juicier and wetter, lower in pectin, so they don't thicken as efficiently in sauces. But all that being said, the best tomato is the one you've got. Actually, the best tomato is the one your neighbor grew and gave to you. After that, the best tomato is the one you've got. I hope all this isn't boring you. Haven't really done too much today. All right, where is my garlic press here? I'm feeling lazy, so I'm gonna smash these guys through, skin and all. Surprisingly, it works just fine. Sometimes it works even better because when you do it with the skins on, they tend to pull most of like the gunk out of the holes for you, so it actually makes it easier to clean. All right. Okay, so garlic in. Give that a quick little toss. I'm gonna get my tomatoes in. Let those cook down a little bit. And now finally, the most important ingredient here is the chilies. So these are hatch chilies that I got at the farmer's market last summer. I roasted them and then shredded them and then froze them. you can buy in a lot of places these days. You can find like frozen. Hey, come on, frozen hatch chilies that are roasted and ready to use, kind of like this. If not, you can always use, buy a fresh Anaheim chili, roasted the same way I just did that tomato, or put it under the broiler and kind of roast until it goes soft. Or look up a YouTube video about how to roast a chili. Essentially, you want to char the outside and then put it in a bag or cover it somehow so that it steams until the skin can be peeled off. So you can do it yourself like that. If you really want an easy shortcut, easiest thing to do, just buy some canned chilies. Even like whatever Ortega brand, whatever it is going to work. You can buy canned green chilies virtually anywhere these days, and those will work just fine. You won't get that same really, distinctly smoky, sweet flavor that you get from a roasted fresh chili, real fire roasted fresh chili. But you'll still get something good. I'm not going to use all these, but I'm just going to chop them up so I have them. I think that's good. Man, these smell so good. Really nice and smoky. There we go. A couple chilies worth in there. How's our beans doing? They're right down at about the texture I want them. You see, sort of nice and somewhere between like a soup and a stew, kind of creamy, but still quite loose. I wish I could call the technology connections guy and get him to come here and take my fridge apart and tell me how it works and then fix it for me. You don't have to watch me clean up. I'll be back in a couple minutes. All right, so my flavor base, you can see it's like almost kind of dry now. And instead of sort of bubbling and simmering, it's now starting to sort of sizzle a little bit, which is good. That means that you've cooked out the excess moisture, and now it's starting to concentrate a little bit more, and it's also going to increase in temperature. So like the moisture in there acts as a sort of inhibitor to the maximum temperature it can achieve. So basically, until all of the free water has been evaporated, or until a good amount of it has been evaporated, it's really difficult for the contents of a pan to get above the boiling temperature of water. But once it starts to get above the boiling temperature of water, that's when you get sort of more flavor development through the sort of Maillard reactions and the browning reactions. That said, I don't want to let this get super deep brown. I just want a little bit of flavor development. I want to see the color get a little bit darker, and I think we're just about there. And so now I'm going to take this flavor base, pour it into my beans. And as I was saying before, you can do this the other way around. I could have done all that in this pot and then added my beans separately afterwards and combined, and the end result is basically the same. Maybe in one case you wouldn't have spilled them out on the stove like I just did. Now, if I had some cilantro, I would add a handful of chopped cilantro in here right now. And then I would add some more of it right before we ate it. But I don't, so I'm not going to. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to let this... Well, actually, I'm going to pull out a bowl of this for myself to eat right now. But the rest I'm going to let it sort of simmer until lunchtime. So maybe another 30 minutes it will sit there simmering. And that is enough time for it to really blossom in flavor. Doesn't that look good? You get that, yeah, smoky, sweet. Hot. Man, there is so much flavor. Come on, it's delicious. You want some? Ooh, those hatch chilies got some heat. You go. Good boy. All right. Frijoles Charros. Guys, gals, non-binary pals. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.